Hi, I'm Mary Jane Brixa, and I have a company called Lioness Publications, and this company provides charting services. Now, these charting services are based on factors that I have been working on for 10, 12 years. And specifically, what I want to talk about is the use of these charts in political elections. So what I want to do is go through some of the charts that I have created, and I have quite a few books out. I have one right here, my most recent one, the 2024 presidential elections. I also have one for 2016. I also have one for 2020. Now we're going to look at a few charts. I'm going to try and make it quick, not to waste your time, but just so you have an idea of how these charts can provide quite a bit of data. So let's take a look first at Joe Biden for 2024. Now the charts look like this. And in effect, this top chart here is a risk yield chart. And the risk yield chart has, in effect, an upper portion and a bottom portion. The upper portion is for what is called yield. The bottom is for risk. As you might already realize, yield would be positive versus risk is negative. But rather than saying negative, let's say obstacles. Let's say it's not quite as easy to get to where you need to go. So you have to be more adroit in getting around the obstacles. Now, I take the factors twice a month, and then I graph them out. The dates are at the bottom. The amount is on the side here. And we have the blue here, which is the yield, and the red is the risk. Now, there's two shades of blue. The lighter shade is for what's called the transient, and the darker shade is for what's called core. Same thing on the bottom. The darker red is for core. The lighter, which is pink in this case, is for what's called the transient. Now, if we look at Joe Biden for 2024, what I want to point out is that when we're looking at the risk yield, with this chart, we sort of look to see what type of activity there is and how much. So we'd probably be saying, is he going to be running? And in effect, how's he doing? Now, in this book and most of the books, you have both the 2023 or the year prior and then the 2024. Because you don't want to just go by what you see in 2024. Now, in this case, we can see beginning of the year was pretty tough. So even though Biden was doing well in the primaries, considering there was only one other person, there were a lot of other international events going on. So this not only picks up his status in the races, it picks up pretty much his life. But when you're running for president, pretty much that campaign is going to be most of your life. And that's what these pretty much charts depend on. Now let's come down to the second type of chart, which is called a delta core transient. And what this does is it takes the risk and the yield and in effect makes a delta. So you can see what parts of the chart are actually in yield versus what are in risk. Now, black is the core, green is the transient. Now, what's sort of obvious here is that when we get to the end of the year, right here, right around the November period, and specifically in the election day period, we're seeing that the core is sort of flat. Now, that's not usually a great sign. You want it to have some momentum, typically up. So if we're looking at this, where's the up momentum? Right over here. We saw it during the primaries. He was winning, once the other person dropped out. So we're seeing some resolution there. Here, we're seeing it flat. However, what is decent is that we have a transient that is going up. But the transient is more of a momentary. It's only lasting a few days. The core is the one that has the momentum, and typically that's a month, few months. So that really tells you where the trend is, and that's important. So looking at this, I might say, yeah, he's got a chance to be president, but maybe there's someone better. That's a key. Maybe there's someone better. Now, I can create a chart like this 4 years out, 10 years out. In fact, this chart for Biden I created a few years ago. Now, let's take a look at another chart. And this one is going to happen to be Harris. Now, Harris ended up, once Biden moved away from running, Harris became the candidate. But it took a while for her to rally the party behind her. And we can see here that this year it's been a year of obstacles this last year. So we have the first piece coming down and then again, and then finally coming up. So she's had some momentum here. And that momentum was after the convention. So when we're looking at this type of chart, it's important to look at events we think are going to happen and then look at what the chart's showing. So it could tell us ahead of time of what might be happening. And what I say is it's a probability. It's not exact. It's a probability. So you have to, look at this and maybe look at other factors. So if we come down to here, we can see election day is right in here, but she's already peaked. Now, she's also in the bottom part of the chart, which means she's more in a risk area. That in itself is not a great probability indicator. But she has had momentum. That is a significant amount of momentum. But then it comes down. So in this case, looking at this chart, I would probably say, yeah, maybe a little bit of chance here. It depends who she's running after, or running with, or running against. So let's take a look at another chart. And this chart is going to be Donald Trump. So let's take again where the risk yield chart is important, but we know, and this is more important when you don't know who's going to be running. It gives you an idea of the amount of activity. But since we're sort of doing the after effects, we know they've had activity. We know they were running. So let's come down to this piece here. And we're looking at, let me come over to 2024. Not that yet. So 2024, we can see he's got an active year, a lot of risk, but he thrives in risk. Let's take a look down here at the actual delta. This one's important. Now, at the beginning of the year, it was tough for him because he didn't have a clear field. Even though he was the incumbent, he had Haley running. Now, what that means is that Haley was pulling a lot of the vote. Now, if we're coming over here, we can see that even coming into, the middle part around the Democratic convention, he was pretty low here. What is sort of significant is that right around the 6:30 time, the debate he had, we see the transient fly right up here. It was down and then it flew up. So Biden didn't do well in the debate. And this is showing how Trump sort of came up out of that. More importantly, let's come over to here. Because what we can see here is that around mid-October, we have both the core and the transient moving up. Now, this is moving up, and it's actually moved past the zero level, so it's actually into yield, and it's both of them have moved up. That's indicated that Trump had momentum. In this case, when we looked at the Harris chart, it didn't. When we looked at the Biden chart, it didn't. So maybe Biden would have had a chance if he ran, but not likely. Probably wouldn't be successful. Harris, she had momentum, but she lost it. And that momentum didn't carry her up over into yield. So here we can see that, wow, okay, went up and beyond. Guess who won? Trump. Now I want to show two other charts quickly, and these are ones that they didn't win. So now Ron DeSantis, I'm going to show the 2023 chart. Because I think this is important, because when I first did these charts, everyone was saying Ron DeSantis was a shoo-in. But if you look at this, the risk yield, it has a lot of risk here, not too much that's positive. That's indicating to me he's really fighting a battle. He's fighting a battle to get people to support him, to get money, to get voters looking at him. So this is sort of a difficult start. And I said, geez, I don't know. And that's shown more dramatically down here. You can see that he's pretty much right down in the risk area. So now let's come over to 2024 for Ron. We're looking up here, not too much significant. Okay. We've got some up here, which is the primary period, and that's interesting because, he was in a few primaries before he dropped out. But the time that there would have been a convention, there's not much going on. And that's sort of a clue you're saying, the time of the election, same thing. I'm not seeing any spikes up So when I first look at charts like this, potential candidates, I always look at the November timeframe. But that can be deceiving because in 2020, the November timeframe was not the whole story. So what happened was because of Trump not conceding, we had to look a little bit further down the line. So that can happen. Sometimes you're looking at a date and where you're looking has to be right. It's going to tell you what's happening then. So if it happens later, you may miss it. Now, this is the one that tells me a pretty good story about DeSantis. And this is not saying he's a good or bad person. It's not saying that he can't run again in 4 years. All this is saying is at this time and this place, he really doesn't have the factors that are in his favor. Because if you look, he's pretty much below the line, the zero, in risk all year. And when you look at it November 4th, there's like nothing happening. It's stagnant. It's just going along, straight line, and dipping down a little bit. Now, could you find someone that is dipping up? And yeah, you might be able to. But when I run all my candidates, and sometimes I'll have 40 or 50 candidates, one of the first things I do is look at that November timeframe. Are they going to make it or not? So when everyone was gung-ho about DeSantis, I put him in because I always have a list of people I'm going to do, and I never take them off the list if I add them in the beginning. So if you pick up a book like this, you're going to see, well, this person wasn't running. No, but they were running in my mind. So I needed to do a chart and then say, okay, they're not going to win. So I have all the list of people, and then I look at November timeframe, and then I go backward. What about the convention period? What about the primaries? What about, did they get money? What are they doing in the debates? Now, lastly, what I want to look at is last person, which is Newsom. So, from what I just said about what I look at first, let's take a look at what I look at first. Isn't this awesome? Look at this momentum in both transient and in core. We've got both of them heading right up into risks, into yield. Now, this is a nice sign, okay? It's indicating that he's got all the things at that period in time that could put him over the line. The problem is, once you see this, you need to back up because this doesn't tell everything. If he doesn't get to the convention, if he doesn't get through the primaries, then nothing's going to happen. So let's come to where the convention is. No, his core is down. But if we look right around the 7 period, right after Biden had the bad debate, we see that the core line jumps up. That meant at that period, all the people that had wanted to run for president, all the Democrats, they were probably saying, oh, maybe. It wasn't meant to be, though. So this is a case where he had great stuff here, but it wasn't meant. If we come back, we can see the primaries too. He wasn't active here. Now, in this case, this is not as important because in a case like if Joe Biden stepped out and he let them do a little debate, whatever, then they wouldn't have done the primaries. But again, the reason I'm showing this, you start off here and then you work back. So why would you use something like this? Because this is better than a poll. I can do this 2 or 3 years out. I can do it 10 years out. I could do it 50 years out. I just need the person, and I need to know what dates we're looking at. Now, I can do this, and I will be doing it for the Senate. I'll be doing it for the presidential races, and those 2 books will probably come out next year. I also do this for stock markets, for stocks, because it's just factors. I mean, I can run the same thing, find out good, bad, and how they sort of equal out, and then try to identify how they're fitting in to that life, or to that, or having that activity. Now, these books are available on Amazon.com, and I have a website, Lioness Publications. It shows a lot of charts out there. They're really interesting. I talk a lot about this. So it's lionesspublications.com. Now, this is my book for the United States 2024 presidential candidates. I also have other books, so it's not just one race. I have USA 2020 presidential candidates. I also have the Senate candidates, the Senate elections. Now, again, they're all named USA with the year and then what type of election it is or whether it's candidates. I also have a 2016. And in addition, as I noted, I do companies. Here is my Dow Jones 2019 trends. So hopefully it didn't turn out to be so short, but a lot of material to cover. Many of my clients don't even need me to interpret the charts. They actually interpret them themselves. They're relatively straightforward. Although some cases I go in and I do a little bit more investigation of what the factors are and try to put more detail there. But I found sometimes that actually doesn't help. Sometimes it makes it more confusing and adds more noise. These things seem to be, if you know the situation, if you know a little bit more about the client, in effect, in this case, the politician, sometimes it speaks for itself. Oh, my prices are on the website for this. Very quick to do a turnaround on these, or you can wait for the book when it comes out. But before you do that, you should get at least this one book here, because it talks a lot more about it, and it has a whole bunch of charts. I mean, the whole thing is pretty much all charts in here of all the people that I thought would be running. Thank you for letting me take your time. Hopefully it wasn't a waste. And have a great evening. Bye now.